Hello everyone and welcome back to The Knowledge. It's Racing TV's new show that puts our major flat festivals under the spotlight. This time it's the turn of the Qatar Goodwood Festival, popularly known of course as Glorious Goodwood. Once again, for The Knowledge, we've gathered together a team of experts to help guide you step by step through everything you need to know about the festival's major races. But first up, as ever on The Knowledge, we start by looking at the track, and as you will know, Goodwood is one of Britain's more idiosyncratic and, from punters and jockeys' point of view, frustrating courses. Let's have a look at some track facts, shall we? It's a right-handed, markedly undulating track. Races up to 10 furlongs use the lower bend you can see there, and races in excess of 11 furlongs use the top bend. It's quite a complicated track. The 5 furlong straight goes from the top bend, and its inside rail sort of turns gently towards the right, like the sides of a 50p coin. Copyright Richard Hughes. How do races tend to develop? Hazardously. I could just leave it there really. But front runners or handy races tend to be favoured. Patiently ridden horses often get stuck in traffic. It's usually best to challenge at the middle. You have to bear in mind, of course, it's Britain's fastest 5 furlong track, but over 6 furlongs, the Steward's Cup trip, the first furlong is partly uphill. Some horses simply do not act here, so be prepared to be forgiving if a horse doesn't run well here this week and then turns out again. So that's enough from me and my thoughts about the track. Let's go to two people who have ridden it many times and very successfully at that. It's George Baker and Martin Dwyer.
Goodwood Racecourse, what a glorious place to be, what a glorious place to ride winners. It's a very unique, very challenging track, and it can be very difficult as a jockey sometimes. We're going to try and give you a little tour around and an insight into what it's like to ride this famous racetrack. And no better man than a man beside me to help me do that, Mr. George Baker. George, you were very successful around here. How did you approach riding this course?
Well, I think it's so important to be tactically aware at all times around here. Obviously, there's lots of nuances, and you've got to be on your A game all the time. And jockeyship is massively at a premium. And I feel that, well, as you know, Martin, yourself, when you step back into the way and you see a lot of demoralised and people that are frustrated when things haven't gone smoothly, especially in those big runner handicaps, jockeyship's at a premium.
It's a very unique track. It's very challenging at times. Let's start at the 2,400 metre marker. So George, we're at the 1.5 mile start, or a 2,400 metre start. You can see the stands in the background. This is actually the lowest point of the track, isn't it? And obviously we start uphill. It's normally the Gordon Stakes from here. How important is it to get a good break and a good position from here?
From this point, it's a long climb, isn't it, to the top of the hill when you sort of start to turn for home, and it sort of evens off and the ground falls away from you. So it's a very important time. I always felt if you are slowly away, in my opinion, I would always just leave it and go, I'm going to have to accept it and ride my race from there.
And if we move forward, it's actually quite an interesting track, Goodwood. I mean, there's 4 starts from this one position. We've got, as we said, the 1.5 mile, mile 3. And just from the bend here, this is the 1.25 mile or the 2,000 metre, which is normally the Katanasa Stakes, which is and a 1 mile as well. So, and again, as you can see, that goes uphill. So it's very similar to the 1.5 mile start.
Yeah, so you've got 2 starting points for those 4 trips, as you say. And the difference is when you use the top and lower bend, it's a furlong less to use the lower bend than the top bend. So you've got to be on the ball, make sure you know where you're going, and the cones are in the right place when you do the cut across.
That's true, yeah. You need to be sharp, don't you, to ride around Goodwood. I've always found when you come here for the start of any of these races, this is like a real pressure cooker moment. You're trying to keep your horse relaxed, and there's a lot of pressure, and all the jockeys go quiet, and everybody's thinking of their race plan and what they want to do. Be honest, have you ever taken the opportunity from one of these starts and annihilated your opposition and taken them out of the race?
Well, the camera angles aren't as solid as they are in other parts of the track here, so you can definitely fabricate a better position and wipe someone out if they're getting in your way.
That's a good word, fabricate. But yeah, there's never any prisoners taken from these starts. It's a really important start to the races. So George, from the longer distance races, the Goodwood Cup and the 1.5 mile start, we're now into the back straight of Goodwood. At this point, it's probably best to explain as we run up the hill. You've got the 2 bends you can see for the first time, one going right and one going to the top. So the 2,400 metre start, we'd go to the trees and go around the top bend, and the 1 mile 3 start, we normally cross over that way, don't we?
Yeah, for sure. and you probably wouldn't race as tight to the outside rail, if that makes sense, because you're racing around the shorter loop as such, and you just maintain your racing line, moving up. So you just want to keep things nice and smooth and go the shortest distance.
But anyway, listen, we're at the mile start here for the biggest race, the Sussex Stakes, over a mile. Well, tell us, you've ridden in the Sussex Stakes a few times before, so obviously we line up here for the mile start, and this would be the view we'd have. So if you're in the stalls now, riding in one of the biggest Group 1 races of the season, what are you thinking as a jockey?
So my first thought would be where you're drawn. So if you're drawn on the inside, you want to hold your position, because as we've seen a lot, if horse out wide will kick up there, go forward, and you can end up getting shuffled back and get a poor position quite easily. So I'd always, if I was drawn well, I'd really jump into stride well, go and get my position, and then if I want to take back, I can do. And as you can see, it's fairly level, and then you go a furlong and you get to the 7 furlong start, and it really climbs up. So this is an important time to get your position early doors.
What about the handicaps? Come on.
Well, you find out who your mates are in those situations, don't you, when you're drawn badly and you're trying to get in, no love lost. And I think it's very important on this track to have a sort of idea what you're trying to achieve. You know, if you're on a horse that needs to take a lead, when you're going into that top bend, you want to be saving ground, you want to be too wide going around it, but then you need to position yourself to get into a good position to challenge. As we've seen, if they go a good gallop here and the horse in front of you are stopping, it's very hard to get a run up the inside. So position at the start, especially over the mile, is so important.
So much can go wrong between here, the bend and the winning post. Let's walk down to probably the most crucial part of the course, and it's that crossing where a few jockeys have gone wrong in the past and tried to go the wrong way.
It's very important to know where you're going, and jockeyship's at a premium on this track at this point of the track. You have to remember you've still got a good way to run. 6 furlongs on the lower bend, 7 furlongs on the top bend. It's a long way from home.
People don't realise watching, but when you're making a run-in, things are going through your head like, how can I get them beat behind me? Yeah. So you're not just out there making a run-in and waiting until it's time to go. You're actually trying to control the pace and slow it down. And I've always thought the best feeling in the world when you're in front is if you're getting it your own way. If you hear the jockeys behind you shouting and swearing, that's when you know you've got them in trouble. And they're out of the rhythm, aren't they? They're out of the comfort zone.
Yeah, well, again, I'm going to blow my own trumpet. I won the Celebration Mile here on Premier Loco,
pick that one up.
Pick that up, it was a masterful ride from the front, and there was no pace on paper, and I just dictated it in even fractions and built it up nice and gradually. I got headed, but again, if you use your horse at the right time here, you'll always finish off well, and I nailed it that day, even if I do say so myself.
If somebody said, can you sit down with a blank piece of paper and design a race course that is going to confuse jockeys and be difficult to ride, this would be here, wouldn't it? I mean, it's like no other track in the world. I mean, we've stopped here at this point, and we actually haven't even spoken yet about the races that start that way and go that way and all the way around again. So we got the mile 6 start here, which is normally the Lily Langtree, and then further down we've got the Gold Cup start itself, which is 2 miles, and we actually have to go downhill past here and loop all the way back around where we've just been. It's such a crazy race course, isn't it? George, we're on the sprint track. This is where it gets fast and furious. Obviously, if we look down the start there, that's the 1200 metre start, which is the biggest betting race of the week, the Steward Cup, maximum field, 20 odd runners, cavalry charge. Why so much emphasis on the draw? I never know where I'm supposed to be drawn and I always find you better being drawn near the best horses to take you into the race. What do you feel?
I agree, Martin. I think it's very fair normally with the ground across the track. They do a wonderful job here to maintain a sound surface across. There's the odd time when the ground's softer, there's a specific part of the track that's better to be. But I always agree with you in the fact that where the race develops from a speed perspective is where you want to be. You want to be drawn into it. We've seen speed horses, it really suits them here. So you want to be where that's developing.
So George, the 1000 metre start, it's quite a specialist trip this, isn't it, at Goodwood? It's probably one of the fastest in the country, wouldn't you agree? Yeah,
I completely agree, Martin. As you can see, as you look down the track, the ground falls away from you. There's a slight camber from the inside rail to the stands rail, and speed horses here, it's a massive advantage. And I've never really worked out why that is. Obviously, it's an easy 5, but I think you need speed, and then you can organise them and sit against them. If you're off the bridle and hunting along, it's very hard to keep them in a good rhythm.
If we're talking about 1000 metres at Goodwood, then we've got to talk about Batash. In recent years, he's probably been one of the best horses here over this distance, where at other tracks he's probably come unstuck a little bit. Why is he so suited to this 5, do you think?
It's an easy 5 furlongs, Martin, and when you're dealing with Ascot 5 to here, they're completely different, chalk and cheese as such. Whereas the ground falls away, it really suits him. You don't have to be so worried about conserving his energy at the right time. You can sort of let him use his stride and get on with things. Whereas if it was a stiff track, you're always mindful that he's not really seeing it out as strongly as you would do at a track like Goodwood.
George, 2 to go, or 400 metres up to the winning post. This is a stage of the race where you've got to be making your decisions, haven't you? Whether you're going to ride for luck and stay on the inside, or try and edge out to the outside and get a clear run, haven't you?
Yeah, I think from the 3 furlong marker to the 2, you need to be aware of what's going on around you and trying to work out, if you're coming from behind, where you're going to negate your best passage going forward. And for me, you want to be aware, if they've gone really hard, it's very unlikely that you're going to get a run up the inside because horses are going to be falling back through the field. So I'd always give myself options. I think it's a key point. And then at the 2 pole, you've got to sort of commit and stick with what your plan is. And if you're going up the inside of the brave man's route, you need to be prepared that you may get stopped in your run.
So you'd be thinking at the 3 pole, your bottle job, I'd wait till the 2 at least. I always think at the 2, that's when you need to start. If I remember Mohatta last year in the Sussex Stakes, Jim Crowley got to a position where he was full of running and nowhere to go. And I think it was here where he decided, right, I've got to come out now. I think he ended up going backwards.
And coming out.
And sacrificing ground as they quickened, and then at least he got out and got a clear run. That was a decisive move, wasn't it, last year?
It was, but I tell you what you need in those situations, Martin, and that's why Goodwood really suits those speed horses. When you switch out, you need a turn of foot to get you out of trouble, and I don't believe many milers at that sort of level had his sort of setup to do that. He's a very quick individual, and he seemed to very good effect on a track where you need that turn of foot to get you out of trouble. You know, if you can stop something, he's very light-footed, quick on his feet, and you had gears to get you out of trouble when you need it.
So do you reckon this course is better ridden with patience than not?
Well, but I do believe, I'm massively advocate of feeling that you can make the run in here. If you get it right and don't get challenged too soon, you're dictated to a lot of the time by who's following you up. So I think you just got to trust your fractions and use your horse at the right time. And on this track, you need a little bit of luck and running.
Well, here we are, George, at the winning post, one of the most famous winning lines in the country, where everyone wants to be in front. George, have you got any advice for people at home that might want to watch and have a bet, and what they should be looking for? What kind of horse you need to win at Goodwood?
Well, obviously, I think if you're betting on the sprint track, you want to look and see where the draw's being advantageous, where the pace horses are set up, and also one thing for me through this week of the Qatar Goodwood Festival is to have a jockey who is really effective on this track, and there's a few that stand out for me.
Well, there you go. I hope that's been informative, and Goodwood Festival is just around the corner. Cannot wait.
Welcome back to the studio. I've been joined by Eddie Fremantle, and he is going to run his eye over some of the key races, starting off with arguably, probably, the banner race of the festival, the Qatar Sussex Stakes. Let's learn a little bit about it. It's significant within the pattern and the calendar. So it's the first all-aged Group 1 mile clash of the season. Of course, we had the Falmouth Stakes at the start of this month at the July Festival, but that was confined to fillies and mares. And of course, if you win this race or are narrowly beaten and very competitive in it, all of the top races in Europe and beyond are available to you. Sir Henry Cecil, of course, trained Frankel, the most successful horse in this race, who won it twice in 2011 and 12, and Prince Khalid Abdullah, of course, owned him, amongst others in the past, including the fastest winner, Distant View, back in 1994. The track record, though, belongs to Beat Le Bon, who won the Golden Mile Handicap in 2019 over the course and distance and went on to be a decent horse in pattern races too. So let's have a look at where the horses taking part in the Qatar Sussex Stakes feature in terms of the current miling standings. Sadly, Eddie, we don't have Palace Pier. He was set to clash with Poetic Flair, but his bloods were wrong, and instead he's going to be trying to defend his crown in the Jacques Le Marois. Not on that graphic, but probably worth mentioning are Space Blues, who's set to run in the Lennox. He's got a mark of 120. And Mutakael, of course, who won the Bunbury Cup so impressively, he's on 118. Baid, who's on 119 there, we won't see at Goodwood. Hopefully we'll see him in top race at the end of the season. At the July Festival, the meeting we featured in the previous knowledge, he won the Sir Henry Cecil. But you can see the horses that are highlighted there that are entered in the Sussex Stakes at the time of recording. Again, at the time of recording, Snow Lantern was more likely to go for the Nassau. So, Eddie, let's have a look at the betting. And in the absence of Palace Pier, Poetic Flare is odds on.
And rightly so, I think, given the flashy or very impressive win at Royal Ascot in the St James's Palace Stakes since his 2 efforts in the English and Irish Guineas, the win at Newmarket and the excellent second in Ireland.
Let's take a look at his 2000 Guineas success, shall we? This is how he announced himself, and he has chinned it in behind him in 5th, and his most dominant display, of course, at Royal Ascot last time. What's the key to producing a brilliant performance from him?
I think the ground is probably important. He wasn't as brilliant as Ascot here, so there's a good chance that racing around the bend suits him as well, but he really grits it out with Master of the Seas, who's the horse on the far side in the Godolphin Blue. Chinned it some way behind, but he was initially started his run from a way back. Didn't lose any ground in the closing stages, so the Hannon team must feel some possibility they've got a chance of turning the tables with Poetic Flare.
I think Poetic Flare is very, very good indeed.
He is. He was exceptional at Ascot. He quickened away in the style of a really good horse. I think the track will suit him. The right-handed bend. It's a longer straight than Ascot, but he's proved himself on courses with long straights, both at the Curragh on ground which is probably a bit too soft for him, and at Newmarket, as you saw.
Okay, let's have a look at Tilsit, shall we? This is a horse that won at the Qatar Goodwood Festival last season. He also ran in the Joel Stakes towards the back end of that season also. This is him finishing 4th there, but this season we've seen him finishing 2nd in the Prix d'Ispahan and winning the Summer Mile.
Yes, and the Summer Mile was a bit unsatisfactory in that they didn't go much pace there, but he was able to get the better of Century Dream, who's a hard-knocking sort of horse, not quite top class, but a decent horse in his right. Here, he showed his inexperience. There's a lot more water under the bridge as far as he's concerned. He drifted away on towards the stand side. Kamiko, of course, won the Guineas last year, so not a bad effort, but I think he's proved himself a bit better than this season.
Yes, he looked very gawky last season. He looked like the kind of horse who would come on this year.
Yeah, and he has. He stepped forward. He's won that Group 2. He's worth his go in this Group 1 race, but he probably is up against the top 3-year-old Poetic Flare.
Let's have a look at Alcohol Free now. She was 3rd in the Falmouth Stakes last time we saw her. She does have the option at the time of recording this of the Rothschild. What did you make of this performance?
I thought she probably got undone by a couple of things. She was in front a long time and eventually gets worn down. She still looks likely to take a lot of catching here as they approach the furlong pole. And I think she's probably racing on the wrong part of the track as well. The horses coming up the middle at Newmarket were doing better over the 3 days there. And in the end, Snow Lantern comes through to beat her with Lady Beaufort slightly unlucky back in 4th, but it was a really good effort from her. She'd run really well in the Guineas. Again, possibly she was on the wrong side in that race and got her score on the board in the Coronation Stakes at Ascot with a gritty success. She's proving more tractable in her races, I think. She settles better than she did earlier in her career, and she could make Poetic Flare pull out all the stops.
It'd be great to see her in it. Let's have a look at Order of Australia next, shall we? He, of course, won the Breeders' Cup Mile last season. Last time we saw him, he won over 7 furlongs at Group 2 level in the Minstrel Stakes.
He controlled the race from the front, Ryan Moore. He got to the front fairly easily early on, and he just wound it up gradually in the straight and was a fairly convincing winner. He'd flopped in the Queen Anne at Royal Ascot before this. He does seem to be a horse who's very good when things go his way, and you'd think that Moore will be trying to do something similar if he rides the horse on Wednesday.
So envisage that race then for me, how you think the Sussex Stakes is going to be run with that thought in mind. Yes,
there's a possibility we're not going to get a burn up of pace here, so Kevin Manning on Poetic Flare is going to have to set his stall out fairly early in the home straight, I think, if Order Australia gets in the control of the race, as you saw in that race in Ireland. He could be more hard to pass than he should be, if you know what I mean. A stronger run race will suit Poetic Flare, so I think Manning will get going early on him.
Yeah, I tend to agree with that. Let's have a fun look at the betting, but I agree. I think it's not just fast ground. I think a strongly run race is exactly what brings out the best in Poetic Flare, so I agree the long straight should help him. Right, we're going to move on to the Unibet Lennox Stakes, and I've explained why we're looking under that in the miling division. It's over 7 furlongs. It's a Group 2. Of course, it's a relatively new race, established in the year 2000 as a Group 3, but promoted to Group 2 in 2003. And last year's winner is Space Blues, who is drawn in 12. There are 14 declared runners at the time of recording. An interesting 3-year-old there, Creative Force, who of course tried the Dali July Cup last time. Prior to that, a winner over this trip in the Jersey. Let's have a look at last year's race first of all. Space Blues won it quite readily, and there are a number of horses that are reopposing this time around.
Yes, second, third and fourth, Duke of Hazzard, Escobar, who wears the red cap on the outside. He's a quirky character but very talented on his day. And Safe Voyage, who's on the rails in the maroon colours. He's very consistent at this sort of level, but Space Blues comfortably had their measure. Duke of Hazzard's in the pink and green colours of the haze coming through to take second. He quickens away, and that's his talent. He came in this race fit. He'd had a couple of wins already, having been wintered in Dubai. Now, he hasn't been seen since March, so we're taking it a bit on trust that he can do it straight away, but he did win first time back in June of last year after coming back from Dubai. So he has a record going well fresh.
Yes, yeah, so we haven't seen him since he was 9th behind Extravagant Kid in the Al-Quoz. How about Creative Force and the same stable? What did you make of his run in the Dali July Cup?
It was a creditable effort. I mean, he may just need 7 furlongs now, as he proved himself over that trip in the Jersey. He was taking on Group 1 sprinters at 6 furlongs. Decent effort to finish 5th. He's a remarkable horse because he's tiny, and you think he's not got the scope to keep on improving, but he has improved all the time this season. So I think Space Blues will probably have too many guns for him if it comes to the last furlong, but he still could give him a race.
Absolutely. Let's have another look then at the decks for this race and see if there's anything else that Eddie thinks might play a part.
Well, one I was quite interested in is the Oisin Murphy ridden Real Appeal of Mrs. Harrington. She's bringing this horse over from Ireland, having proved himself in Group 3 company last time, beating Lord of the Lodge, who'd been going well all season. Stepping up from handicap company, he's the sort of horse who could make the jump into a Group 2. So he might be more attractively priced than, say, Space Blues, who has got that layoff to contend with.
OK, so that's the milers section with the Sussex Stakes and Lennox Stakes covered.
Welcome to a slightly damp Goodwood ahead of the 2021 Qatar Goodwood Festival. We've had a little bit of light rain or drizzle this morning, giving us about 1.5 millimetres. We had 7.2 millimetres of rain on Friday night. The forecast now for the rest of the week is for it to clear a little today, and then the risk of some thunderstorms this afternoon and this evening, and then drier for the rest of the week, although there are some scattered showers about during the week. The ground is currently good, 7.2 on the going stick. Rail movement, we have false rail in the straight and both the top and bottom bends. It's doled out by 6 yards in the straight and the bottom bend, and 3 yards on the top bend. That rail will all stay in place until Wednesday evening, when the rail in the straight will come down, leaving a cutaway at about the 3.5 furlong mark. We'll provide some fresh ground on the straight for Thursday, and then on Thursday evening the rail on the bottom bend and the top bend will both come down, again to provide some fresh ground on those bends for Friday and Saturday. I hope you enjoy the Qatar Goodwood Festival.
Now we're going to turn our attention to some nascent stayers. We'll return to this division later on in this show when we think about the Al-Shakab Goodwood Cup and the Qatar Lily Langtree. But now we're going to think about the 3-year-olds, the Gordon Stakes. It's over 1.5 miles. It's a significant Group 3 in its own right, but it is so often used as a crucial stepping stone to the Cazoo St Leger. Let's take a look at the current betting for the Cazoo St Leger, shall we? You can see that the Gordon Stakes runners entries are highlighted. Ivor, after his superb victory in the King George, is joint favourite with his stable companion Hurricane Lane for the St Leger. Now, the plan that Charlie Appleby said immediately after that race was that Ivor would go for the Niel and the Arc, but that Hurricane Lane could go for the St Leger and the Arc. There's also Alan Kerr there as well, and Lone Eagle, who was well beaten in the King George. But Aidan O'Brien has got a couple of interesting runners in the Gordon Stakes this time around, potentially, and it's just a case of trying to work out which ones he is going to run. And for that task, to find out what he might be running, what might be featuring in the John Pierce Racing Gordon Stakes. We have enlisted Fran Berry. Fran, welcome. Easy task to work out what's going to be running in the Gordon Stakes. First of all, how do you see it in terms of the race? Does it look like a good addition?
Lydia, I think it looks like a cracking race. If you detested a classic form, some horse that might have had excuses at Epsom. We'll get a look at Third Realm in a minute. I think 3 quick runs in 6 weeks, and he had a scare in Epsom down the hill, which we might highlight in a minute. And the likes of Wordsworth and Sir Lamorak, will they run 2 weeks on from that Grand Prix de Paris run? I'm not so sure. To have an extra, Aidan O'Brien is a very interesting horse in his third entry. Sir Lucan, who beat Wordsworth and Navan, we haven't seen him since then. And I think, given the short turnaround for the other two horses for their French trip, Sir Lucan could be the one that runs.
OK, let's start by looking at Sir Lucan, shall we? This is his defeat of Wordsworth. We haven't seen him since, Fran, but Wordsworth has been busy.
Wordsworth has been busy. Of course, he ran a very good race in the Irish Derby, so he is staying on well. And again, in the Grand Prix de Paris, he was beaten 6 lengths by Hurricane Lane. He getting a length and a half closer to him in France than he did at the Curragh. But he definitely idled a bit here in front, Wordsworth. He seemed to just park in front under Shamey Heffernan. And Sir Lucan got a bit of momentum up the hill under Wayne Lorden to finish off strongly and just nab him late on, pulling clear of the third party house ran in the Irish Oaks without any show there. But I like Sir Lucan, Lydia. He's a progressive horse. He didn't show up at Sandown on his seasonal debut, but if you go back to what he'd done as a juvenile, that was his first run of 2021 in that classic trial, and he backed it up at Navan with a much improved performance up in Trip.
They're both pretty well related, aren't they? Sir Lucan is a half-brother to Sir Dragonet and Wordsworth a full brother to Kew Gardens.
That's right, and only going to get better at time and distance, I'd say. Wordsworth, I think, is a real Gold Cup type horse in the making. Whatever he's doing at a mile and a half, he's crying out for further. As he gets further, he'll get better, I think. Sir Lucan, the same would probably apply to him in some respects, but he is a more likely raced horse who's probably open to a bit more improvement than Wordsworth. OK, let's take a look next at Johnny Murtaugh's Ottoman Empire. And Fran, you've wanted to look at this horse twice. Why are you so interested in both of these races? I love this horse, Lydia. He caught my eye in Dundalk on debut in a maiden that's worked out very well. He came home nicely. He battled on really well in Cork despite being green. Here he is winning in Navan. He only gets going inside the last furlong and a half over the 10 furlong trip and a 9.5 furlong trip at Gorham Park. He looks in trouble from the 3 to the 1, but when he meets the rising ground, as you see here at Navan, he lengthens and stretches away well. And once he's got his head in front, Shane Kelly's able just to go through the motions on him. I think whatever he's been doing at a mile and a quarter, you put another furlong and a half, 2 furlongs on him, he could be a different proposition. Here's an example in Gorham Park. He looks in trouble. He was headed by 2 or 3 horses inside the 2 furlong marker, but once Ben Cohen gets stuck into him, he finds plenty for pressure. My theory on him is that I think he's getting away, his class is getting him through these races at a distance that will be short of his best. Johnny Murtaugh's campaigned him very, very cleverly, bringing him through the ranks and winning 3 in a row, but he's going up in grade in his next start. And Johnny did mention at Gorham Park yesterday, he's keen to bring him to Goodwood if the owners OTI racing allow, and I'm excited to see him.
I'm glad you brought him to my attention. I really like him, and I can see exactly what you're talking about in terms of his classes is getting him through at the moment. He's clearly going to do better over further. I'm going to watch him with great interest. Let's move on next to the evidence from the Derby. Third Realm, who was 5th, Youth Spirit, who was 8th. I was astonished, Fran, that Third Realm seemed not to handle Epsom because he went round Lingfield so beautifully.
He did. He had an outside trip in Epsom, though, Lydia, in Lingfield. He had an outside trip in Epsom. He's down the rail. He's having to fight his position. He had Max Sweeney and Hurricane Lane outside him there in the run, and he just fell apart down the hill. You can see the way he lost his pitch. He went from having the box seat. Mojo Star was able to take use of that, and he just fell apart down the hill in the yellow colours under Andrea Cini, and perhaps just being in amongst horses and not getting balanced, he just panicked, and it's like he lost everything. He lost his rhythm, lost his spot, and it was game over. Also, very quick turnaround in races for him. He only started racing in Nottingham in mid-April, and he went to Lingfield, and then he went to Epsom. It's 3 very, very quick runs at that stage of a horse that didn't have a lot of 2-year-old racing.
And how about Youth Spirit, the Chester Vase winner previously?
Yeah, he'll be interesting in a race that could be tactical. He can go forward, he can handle the track, and I'd like to think there's one or two others maybe in there that might have more upside to him, though, I'd feel.
Maybe Ivor is one of them. Let's have a look at his Bahrain Trophy victory, shall we? Prior to that, he'd been beaten in the Cocked Hat by the Irish Derby runner-up Lone Eagle.
That's right, and that Cocked Hat at Goodwood ended up being very, very testing, and Lone Eagle galloped on resolutely. Faster ground here, Newmarket at the July meeting, Bahrain Trophy, always a good test to get racing early there. A lot of these horses stepping up in trip, and this horse really relished it, didn't he? Ivor, he really extended well once he got to the standside rail under James Doyle, and if the ground remains fast in Goodwood, he's a real player, interesting horse, and I'd say he's only getting better and coming to himself as he's got to that 1.5-mile trip.
Now, Prince Palatine won the Gordon Stakes and went on to win the St Leger in 1911. Conduit did the same in 2008. He's the last to do the double, albeit Arctic Cosmos was a really promising third in the Gordon Stakes and went on to win the Leger in 2009. So you can be beaten in this race and still go on to win the St Leger. Fran, what's your idea of the Gordon Stakes winner, and which of these, if any of them, do you think might be a Leger type?
I definitely give Third Realm the benefit of the doubt post Epsom. What we showed there, I think he's valid excuses, but I'm very excited by Ottoman Emperor. He's got to prove that he can step up in class, but I think it's there. I think when he gets that extra 2 furlongs, he could step up massively. He's 8-1 at the minute in the betting. For me, he's a bit of value.
Yeah, absolutely. He looks like my kind of horse. Now for us, a little bit of nostalgia. We're going to look back at the 2003 Goodwood Cup, and it was won, of course, by the great Persian Punch. This 10-year-old was having his 8th season on the track. He was one of the most popular horses ever. He had his own fan club and website. He regularly won Horse of the Year polls. He was owned by Jeff Smith, trained throughout his career by David Ellsworth, and ridden by many different jockeys, but for many of his final starts, certainly since the Geoffrey Freer in August 2002, right up to and including the end of the 2003 season, it was Martin Dwyer who rode him. Martin, what are your memories of Persian Punch?
Well, I've got some great memories. He's probably my favourite horse of all time, to be honest, Lydia. I started, like you say, lots of different jockeys rode him. I took over in 2002. I think Richard Hughes had been riding him up to that point, and he'd been running pretty poor, and they were in a bit of a quandary as whether to retire him or not. And I rode him in a Geoffrey Freer, and it just seemed to click. I got on really well with the horse, and we had a couple of great seasons together. And to be honest with you, it was a strange feeling riding Persian Punch. Not like any other horse I've ever ridden. It was almost like you were a custodian of a horse that was. It was a big responsibility. He had a massive fan club and a big fan base, and there was a bit of pressure riding him, to be honest.
Because so many people were willing you and him to win.
Yeah, I mean, everyone loved the horse. There's not many horses have their own fan club, and you know, he was just loved by the general public, and it was a massive pressure going out to ride him, and I got a great thrill from it, especially the Goodwood Cup. But yeah, I remember taking over, and Richard Hughes said to me, he said, you'll have fun riding him, good luck with him. And he said, I can't get a tune out of him. And for some reason, we seemed to click. And he was 9 years of age when I started riding.
And he's a horse, I reckon, that quite liked the theatre of the race, because, you know, he knew that the audience liked a bit of jeopardy, didn't he? So he started sort of, I think you called him as sort of taking the mix sometimes in the middle of races. And then, you know, when the chips were really down, he decided to play his cards.
Yeah, he was a warrior, wasn't he? And I think that's why people latched onto him, because he'd fight horses off at every stage, horses that come and challenge him. And when he looked like he was beat, he just pulled it out of the bag. And towards the end of his races, normally when I was getting tired, he'd take over and kick on. But you had to really push him from the start to finish, and you had to set as strong a tempo as you could, because he had so much stamina. And he broke the heart of other horses. And I think, yeah, people just enjoyed to watch him. And you know what? I think he could finish last, and then he could win his next race. And I think people love that as well.
Let's think about what happened then in 2003. you mentioned that you managed to rejuvenate him the previous season, but he had a little setback in early March and was taking a little bit of time to hit his form, which meant that he went off at 20-1 in the Gold Cup at Ascot, but he still managed to finish second. But there was then more encouragement, wasn't there? On Eclipse Day, he'd won the Esher Stakes and another nail biter, getting the better narrowly of the Queen Alexandra winner cover-up.
That season he was a bit of a slow burner. He had a couple of runs that were okay, but not brilliant. And then his form started to come together in the summer. I mean, the Royal Ascot run was fantastic in the Gold Cup, and like you say, he showed great tenacity at Sandown and just got up the shadow of the post and won a short head. So going into Goodwood, we were pretty confident.
He'd won the race 2 years previously. He was facing the title holder, Jardine's Lookout, who had previously been fourth in the Gold Cup at Ascot. What were you thinking about him as a rival? I
didn't really think about the other horses. I mean, like you say, the year before, he finished last in the Goodwood Cup and Jardine's Lookout had won. And there were typical good horses in the race. And I just went out with the mindset that he'd won his last race. He was in great form. He looked fantastic. You know, David Ellsworth was a master trainer, and what he did with this horse, I don't think many other trainers would have got as much out of him. But Elsie knew him so well, and we knew going into the race we were in good order. And I just went out and just did what he likes to do and sent him on as fast as I could go for most of the way, give him breathers where I could. And it was just a great performance all around, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. I mean, you led right from the start, but you were hard at work from quite an early stage, weren't you?
Yeah, I mean, I watched the replay a couple of weeks ago, actually, and I thought to myself, I don't know whether I'll be fit enough to ride him now. But when we crossed over to the trees at halfway, I'm sort of sending him on there, trying to stretch the horses behind me, trying to get him into top gear. And yeah, we really kicked on. And as soon as we turned in down the hill, I kicked him for home, and horses challenged him and he fought them off. And I just remember the last bit where Jardine's Lookout came and you know, it was a real worry, but he just put his head down and he just battled back, and the way he won was just fantastic. The noise in the stand was unbelievable.
Yeah. And afterwards as well. I mean, it was scenes reminiscent of Double Trigger's third win in 1998 in the Goodwood Cup, wasn't it? The reception that you and he received from the crowd that day.
Yeah, it was unbelievable. I remember, did you pull up at Goodwood, and it's quite a sharp pull up, but you go around the corner. So we knew it was a photo finish, but we couldn't hear. So we pulled up and we're all milling around, and Daryl's looking at me and I'm looking at him, and we didn't hear the number called out. But when we heard the noise in the stand, the roof nearly came off, and Daryl looked at me and said, "I guess you won then." And that's how we knew, because the noise was unbelievable. And I remember coming back and the crowd were going mental, and I actually went past Shoots and took him down in front of the stands. I think that's the first time that had been done. I don't know. I just decided to do it. And then there was like a wave. It was like a Mexican wave. The people in the stands rushed down to the front, and they were all putting their hands out to touch him. And, you know, they wanted to see this great horse that everyone loved. And it was a special moment for me.
Yeah, absolutely. Jeff Smith said afterwards that he was a war horse. You could see someone in armour on top of him charging down the opposition. You will not see his like again. Do you fancy yourself in a bit of armour on Persian Punch?
Yeah, he was. He was massive as well, wasn't he? I mean, he was such a character. I mean, he was a massive big horse, and you know, he literally would run through a wall for you when you needed him. But yeah, I mean, I enjoyed riding him so much. I got so much pleasure out of it. And like I say, there was a bit of pressure, but he was just, I'd say, he had a heart of a lion. He was just a massive warrior of a horse.
David Ellsworth said he even makes a crusty old devil like me go a bit soft. Later on that year, he went on to win the horse at the Doncaster Cup, but following a rare poor effort in the Cadran, he returned to Newmarket to characteristically edge out Millenary by a short head in the Jockey Club Cup. And then sadly, of course, he returned the following year, and on his seasonal debut in the Sagara Stakes, he collapsed and died as an 11-year-old. That must have been awful for you, Martin.
Yeah, it was. It was a sad day. It was, you know, without over-egging it, it was like losing a family member. It was just, and I remember, you know, I think it was probably a fitting way for him to go out. As bad as that sounds, he went out on his shield. I remember we turned the corner into the straight at Ascot, and I was kicking him on, and he started to waver and he started to whinny, and it almost felt like he kind of was taking his dying breath, but he kind of waited for me to get off him before he collapsed. And as strange as that sounds, it was almost like he was looking after me. You know, he didn't fall and go down. So I pulled him up straight away, and he kind of went down gracefully, kind of let me get off, and I whipped the saddle off him, and then he just led there in front of the stands at Ascot and passed away, sadly. But it was a fitting way for a horse like him to go out, I felt.
And there was more outpouring of love for him afterwards. I mean, so many people, that's his favourite horse ever. And maybe Persian Punch felt he owed you one, because I know that Clive Britton said to you that they should have had Persian Punch in front of the stewards for overuse of the jockey.
Yeah, no, he made me work. But he did. He looked after me in his final race, and he was hard work, but I got immense pleasure out of riding him. He was I think racing needs horses like that. You know, on the flats, we don't see horses stay around for as long as he did. You know, like you say, his best years were when he was 9 and 10. It was great for racing. Great, everybody loved him. I mean, I'm still friends now with people that were in his fan club. There's a couple who live in Germany I speak to all the time, and they still send me pictures of him. And you know, there's a couple of statues of him. And I know it was fantastic. And Jeff Smith was a great guy. He's had horses forever, and I think he's certainly one of his favourites.
Absolutely. Well, Martin, thank you very much for your memories. Persian Punch gone but never forgotten. Let's enjoy one more time the 2003 Goodwood Cup.
Racing in the Lydia Goodwood Cup, Kayseri was just a fraction slow, and going on in the early stages, as expected, Persian Punch. From Jardine's Lookout, there 2 or 3 lengths to Swing Wing on settling down, and further back is Kayseri with the noseband. Just behind them is Boreas, and just stealing a peep over the shoulder, Keith Dalglish on Swing Wing. Just seeing where they are on the inside. Must have been a bit of calling there. Further back in the field then is Sentinel, followed next on the inside by Boreas, who's just dropped back a place or two. From Savannah Bay and Gulf, and right out the back in the early stages is Augusta Stall. Racing down towards the 1.5 mile turn, a very sharp right-hander coming up, and Persian Punch it is who shows the way. By 2 lengths to Jardine's Lookout up on the outside in second. A length away then in third is Swing Wing. 2 or 3 lengths away Kayseri, followed by Sentinel. Then on the inside of Boreas we have Savannah Bay. Gulf going a little bit wide there, and Augusta Stall is last as they climb uphill now. They've got short of 1.5 miles to travel, and it's Persian Punch out in his familiar pace-making role, pace-setting, out in front here by a length to on the outside. Jardine's Lookout is a lot closer today. 2 lengths away then is Swing Wing. 2 or 3 away then is Kayseri, followed by Gulf, who's taking closer order from Boreas as they round that corner. Further back in the field then Savannah Bay, Sentinel, and a gap in the field then to Augusta Stall. 10 lengths covers the field. The pace has been on throughout, and Martin Dwyer keeping Persian Punch up to his work. The horse went far too fast last year and finished last, but he set a good even gallop here. He's kept them all at it, and as you can see, he's niggling Dwyer on the leader, but that's the way he races. It's Persian Punch out in front. His 6th attempt at the Goodwood Cup. He's won one already, leads by 1.5 lengths to Swing Wing in second. Half a length away third then is Jardine's Lookout. 2 lengths to Kayseri, followed then by Gulf, the stablemate of Persian Punch, as they start to climb uphill now. Sentinel is back in the field with Savannah Bay. Boreas on the left of picture, the green cap, and Augusta Stall, the white cap, is still last. Reaching the highest point of the course now, and it's Persian Punch on the inside of Jardine's Lookout as they make that sharp corner, a right-hander. Then in third is Swing Wing on the inside from Gulf, who's running a good race. Out deeper Sentinel, followed then by Boreas, giving the leader about 4 lengths, 5 lengths start as they charge downhill from Savannah Bay. And last is Augusta Stall, racing down towards the entrance to the home straight in the Lydia Goodwood Cup, and it's Persian Punch who's being ridden for dear life on the far side. Jardine's Lookout coming at him, the yellow cap on the near side. Here's Swing Wing joining in as well, followed further back then on the outside by Sentinel, but Persian Punch is still fighting on. They've got 2 furlongs to go in the Lydia Goodwood Cup. Persian Punch in the centre. On the near side it's Jardine's Lookout. The far side is Swing Wing. Behind them is Savannah Bay, then Sentinel and Boreas right down the centre of the course, but it's still Persian Punch, the roars of the crowd for the veteran, but he's being grabbed now by Jardine's Lookout on the near side. Jardine's Lookout goes a neck up. Persian Punch, can he pull it out of the fire again? He's fighting back, he's coming back at Jardine's Lookout. He flaunches to the lead. Jardine's Lookout coming at him again. Persian Punch has just won it. Persian Punch has won the Lydia Goodwood Cup by a nostril.
One of the races most associated with Glorious Goodwood is the Stewards Cup, a frenetic dash down the 6 furlong spur in the direction of Trundle Hill. It should come as no surprise that it is one of Eddie Fremantle's favourite races the entire season. Which is your favourite Stewards Cup though?
Well, there've been a few, but I think the one that Zidane won in 2007 was just about my favourite.
Why was that?
There was a story associated with it in that they have the draw on the Thursday before the Saturday race, and the trainer of Zidane, James Fanshawe, forgot about this. He thought the draw was on the Friday, so neither he nor any representative was there when the numbers came out. So Zidane's ball came out of the hat. No one there to put him in a stall. Trainers were going high, trainers were going low. Nobody wanted the middle. In the end, they put Fanshawe to the back because he didn't respond within the 60 seconds you're supposed to respond. Zidane got stall 11, which was the stall nobody wanted. But by the Friday, the following day, people suddenly realised when a horse won the consolation, the division of the Stewards Cup up the middle, oh yes, stall 11's a big advantage.
Serendipity.
So the horse went from 6 to 1 to 9 to 1 on the morning of the Thursday, and then back to 6 to 1 again on the day of the race. And he came from a long way back to win nearly on the line, beating the previous year's winner, Borderless Scott, who was a great doughty campaigner in those sort of races. But it was a story about James Fanshawe really making a mess, what he called a cock up, but still coming up smelling of roses.
Absolutely. Were you on?
I was, Lydia, yes.
Good,
yes,
good.
Because you could sense the development of that lane up the middle of the course. So when he went from 6 to 1 to 9 to 1 on the Thursday, I didn't think it was that much of an disadvantage being drawn up the middle. So that was good.
Developing track biases.
Yeah, I think that can be a trait through the week because the course takes a lot of wear and tear.
Yeah.
Things can crop up later in the week that weren't happening early on.
Okay. Right, so let's have a look at the Stewards Cup, the Unibet Stewards Cup, shall we, this time around? And first folio is, at the moment, the 8 to 1 favourite, Hurricane Ivor 9 to 1, Chill 10 to 1, 12 to 1, and upwards the rest. Let's start by discussing Hurricane Ivor, shall we? This is his win at Sandown.
Yeah, he came from France to join William Haggas, and after one down the field run, he was raced over 5 furlongs at Sandown. And you'll see he's away on the far rail now. Quite often, until the last couple of years, the far rail's been the spot you want to be. Sandown's 5 furlong track. This season, not so much. If anything, it's a disadvantage. And you'll see he gets in a little bit of bother trying to get a run. Comes to try and come up the middle of the course and ends up having to switch back inside. Again, I feel the ground this day was more favourable, 2 or 3 off the rail, and he gets up to force dead heat. It was a controversial race. Some people thought he'd won, but there was a mess up with the photograph. But he looks as though he's ready to step back up to 6 furlongs. He won over 6 furlongs in France, and he's unexposed really in this country and in handicaps. He gets a chance to add to his gains so far.
Let's talk about Fresh then, shall we? Who last time we saw him was second in the Woking, and we're going to show you when he won at Kempton last year. What did you like about this performance, Eddie?
He showed a tremendous turn of foot, and that's something that he's shown in other races, including the Woking, where he was a bit unfortunate to get caught near the finish. He shows that speed and then holds off the late finishing Mount Mogan. He was only racing off a mark of 79 here, and he's proved himself to be so much better since. Horse who I think will really enjoy the big field. The track should be fine, and he goes for James Fanshawe, who of course was responsible for Zidane all those years ago.
Absolutely. OK, let's have a look at another key bit of information, shall we? This comes from Haydock, where Danzino is in the winner's enclosure, ahead of Lampang, with Miras back in third.
And all 3 of these are in the lineup on Saturday. Lampang's a tricky customer, but he's definitely got the ability to run a big race in a race like the Stewards Cup. Danzino is tough and has been running in all sorts of top sprint races all his life. And here he just shows a little bit too much tenacity for Lampang, who's perhaps just asked to hit the front too soon. He ran very, very well on the wrong side in the Wokingham, Lampang that is, and he'll, if all three of them meet, he'll have the best of the weights on Saturday. I just thought he was an outsider with a chance.
That race, 3 runners couldn't be more different.
No, exactly, and I think maybe he showed in the Wokingham that he can operate in a bigger field, even though he was on the smaller group on the unfavoured stand side. I think he might be just one of those horses who'll be even better in a huge field to be covered up for a late run.
Now, I take the point that lots of things can happen to the track, to the weather during the course of the week. There are thunderstorms forecast for Goodwood, but it is a place that can hit or miss those. What is your idea of 1 or 2 horses against the field for the Unibet Stewards Cup?
Lampang's an outsider, so it's hard to nominate him, but Fresh and Hurricane Ivor are 2 I think at the nearer to the front of the market you should have on your side. Okay, let's have one final look at the betting. That is how they bet. And Eddie going for some big price ones. Also, just to repeat, Eddie, your selections are... Hurricane Ivor and Fresh are near the front of the market. Have a look at Lampang if he turns up as well.
Okay. There's another really good handicap as well. Well, there's plenty of them. It's absolutely chock full of competitive handicaps, the Qatar Goodwood Festival. The next race we're going to move on to is the Golden Mile, the Unibet Golden Mile. Let's take a look at the betting for that. Magical Morning, who went at Sandown last time, is the 8-1 favourite. The horse who chased him home, Meidani, 9-1. It is 10-1 and upwards the rest. Let's have a look at that critical Sandown race.
Absolutely. There's lots of the protagonists running this again. Marie's Diamond, who's won since, acquitted the third. Meidani, who gets an easy lead, even though he's got a wide draw. He cuts across the rail. Now, he's in the Chesterfield Cup on Tuesday. The first race on Tuesday, so Mark Johnston, he might run Meidani again, but it seems hard to think that he's going to line up twice in big handicaps. So Magical Morning, who travelled easily behind this steady pace, was very well suited. He's going to be a short price, I think, Magical Morning, because it's Dettori, because it's the Gosdens, and it might just pay to look for a bigger price, certainly at this far out. I don't think you'd be wanting to back the favourite. He does win fairly cosily, but he very much had the run of the race. That's him in the maroon colours in 4th place. As they turn into the straight, right out the back in the Godolphin Blue is Bedouin Story. And this was just his 2nd run back from Dubai. Quite an eye-catching run. And if you look at his runs in Dubai, he's very closely matched with Dubai Mirage, another of the Godolphin horses. And Dubai Mirage is an enormous price on for Friday's race at the time of recording. He's got quite a weight pull with Bedouin Story, who I think you'll be able to agree with me, Lydia. This was a pretty eye-catching run on the inside. On the unfavoured side of the track, the horse in the orange cap, Accidental Agent, has come out and won since at Newmarket, rather showing that this the part of the track he raced on was unfavoured, I feel. Escobar, who's in the red cap, finishing 4th, he runs in the Lennox on Tuesday.
I also feel that Sandown was particularly suitable for Magical Morning. I'm not sure that Goodwood is going to be as much his bag.
You're possibly right. That was a race where he very much got the run of the race, and that can't be guaranteed on Friday. The other thing about this race, the Golden Mile, is it's very much a draw race. There's a fresh strip of ground on the far rail, which is often an advantage. Horses with with low numbers have a big edge in normal circumstances, unless it was very heavy ground.
Or there has been an occasion when they've just gone too hard because everyone knows that they're so advantageously drawn. They're sort of fighting to get a good position, and they've ended up the wide horses coming over the top.
It's not impossible for wide horses to win, but in a sensibly run race, the low numbers tend to have an advantage.
Okay. Let's take a look next at some Epsom evidence, shall we? This is Ross Collins' victory, the defeat of Shaleer.
Yeah, Ross Collins running before Goodwood, so he may well not turn out. But Shaleer, I think, is of great interest. He's also in the 7 furlong handicap on Wednesday, but he's the first one who will be balloted out if the race is oversubscribed. So he's very likely not to get in to that race on Wednesday, in which case he'd go for this mile, and he's equally adept at a mile and 7 furlongs. And here he ends up, the horse in the blue colours, on a slightly advantageous slightly less advantageous side of the track in the middle, whereas Roscollin gets towards the stands rail and gets first run on him. I think Chalier's a horse who's still well handicapped. He can run a big race. He doesn't win very often, but a mile and a big field will be fine for him. And he was of interest at very big odds.
Okay, so let's have a final look at the betting. And then, Eddie, you can outline your...
Well, I've gone for two who are not in the betting here, Dubai Mirage and the one you just saw, Chalier. Mainly because we don't know the draw, we don't know the ground, and therefore I think you need a big price to be worth having a bet early on.
It was always going to happen. We show a full frame of betting. Eddie's the guest, and none of the horses he's chosen are on the betting. We should have expected that, really, Eddie.
Yeah, well, this happens, Lydia. Let's hope that they are in the frame when the race comes round.
That's what you're here for. Right, so those are look ahead to the two big handicaps at the Qatar Goodwood Festival.
Well, for part two of the knowledge, you've once again caught me in the car. This time I am up at Musselburgh rather than down at Newmarket Sales, trying to look at how the data can help us solve some of the puzzles ahead during the course of the Qatar Goodwood Festival coming up this week. I'm going to start by looking at the draw of a 7 furlongs and a mile. Several races over this trip during the course of the week. I think there are 8 races over 7 furlongs and 4 over a mile. So plenty of action. Plenty of those will be quite big field contests. I've grouped together the two trips because the draw stats are fairly similar across the two. I've looked back to the beginning of the 2010 season. Let's start with fields of 10 plus runners. Lots of those big field races to go at. 850 horses since the start of 2010 have broke from a double figure draw. Just 4.1% of them have won. 35 winners from that 850 that have tried. Compare that with the bottom 3 stalls, the 3 nearest the rails, stalls 1, 2 and 3. You get double the runners, 70 winners, from less runners, 618 runners. So 232 less runners, but double the number of winners for a strike rate of 11.3%. Look at how the percentage of rivals that you beat from those double figure draws. Less than 45% of the field you manage to beat. If you're breaking from stalls 1, 2 and 3, then on average, you're going to beat 55%, more than 55% of the field. Even if you drill things down to the smaller fields, the single figure numbers, the draw is much less significant, but it is something close to a level playing field. That said, stall 1 is still a big advantage, faring especially well. 44 winners from 222 runners at a strike rate of just under 20%, and over 40% of the runners winning or placing from that inside berth. 54% of your rivals beaten if you break from stall 1. Compare that to the outside gate in a single figure field of 9, just 1 winner from 43. Just over 2% strike rate, win and place at 23%, and only around 40% of the field beaten. So the draw is a big factor in these races. Hopefully that highlights it. I think you want to be with those lower drawn horses in these big fields around Goodwood in particular.
The third Group 1 of the week at the Qatar Goodwood Festival is the Katanasa Stakes. It follows the Goodwood Cup on the opening day, the Sussex Stakes on the Wednesday, the NASA, of course, now homed on the Thursday. Let's have a look at some key facts about this fillies event. It's a Group 1 over 10 furlongs for 3-year-old and upward fillies and mares, established in 1840, running its current form since 1975, and it's been a Group 1 since 1999. There are lots of different ways that the fillies can go next. That's just a selection of them, mostly 10 furlongs, apart from, of course, the Breeders' Cup filly and mare turf over 1.5 miles at the back end in America. Midday managed to win this race 3 times. That was 3 of the 8 successes that Sir Henry Cecil enjoyed in this race. The fastest winner was Deirdre in 2019. And again, the track record actually over this distance belongs to Road of Love in 2006 over the 10 furlong handicap. OK, Fran, let's take a look at the horses towards the fore of this market, shall we, for the Katanasa Stakes. We've got some betting, I think. Ordaria is the 9-4 favourite, following her second to love in the Prince of Wales' Stakes. Snow Lantern stepping up to a new trip is 7-2. Lady Bowthorpe is also stepping up to a new trip. She is 6-1. Joan of Arc in between them there at 4, the winner of the Prix de Diane. Love is still entered in the race, but obviously having run in the King George and finished third, unlikely to line up. Let's go first, Fran, with the two horses trying 10 furlongs for the first time who met in the Falmouth Stakes. Snow Lantern, who of course won it, and Lady Bowthorpe, who was unlucky.
Indeed, Lydia, and a race that takes a lot of watching, doesn't it? Snow Lantern jumped out of the stall 13 under Sean Levy. She was immediately reined back, and thankfully for Sean, we spoke about it in the Newmarket preview, would it go to middle? Thankfully for him, they didn't. Alcohol free. Ocean Murphy went far side. That gave Sean cover, and he was able to get his mount settled. Now he had to work hard to get out. He got a good lead into the race off the eventual second Mother Earth, but Sean, when he switched out, she done well to pick up and get there in the end, showing a really telling turn of foot. Lady Bowthorpe, in comparison, Kieran Schumacher, it's one of them messy races. You've got a choice. It's time to get going, and I need to get out. And when you get out, it all opened up inside him, and that's just the nature of them race. When you get that tactical, the way Lady Bowthorpe finished off was very pleasing, frustrating for connections. But she's by Nathaniel. She's a half-sister to Celebration, of course, but based on what we've seen, she's relaxing better. I think stepping up and trip for Lady Bowthorpe will be interesting. I would suggest Sean Levy's going to really have to be at his best. The less runners, they are the better for Snow Lantern. I think to get her relaxed, he's going to have to probably sit last. He's probably going to have to sit last just to get her switched off. If she over races at any point through the race, she could do too much, and I think he's going to have to look at videos of Richard Hughes riding the Fugue in 2012, that kind of a ballsy late ride. The first two furlongs with her, when he crossed the intersection of the two tracks of Goodwood and climbed the hill to join the outer loop, that's where the race will be one loss for Sean Levy. If she doesn't switch off there, it's game over.
Okay, fascinating stuff about Snow Lantern. Of course, Lady Bertha, were she to win, would give William Jarvis, her trainer, his first Group 1 success since Grand Lodge in the St James's Palace Stakes in 1994. It was so close last time. Right, let's have a look at Joan of Arc, shall we? This is her second to Empress Josephine in the Irish 1,000 guineas. She's since come out and won over this trip, 10 furlongs in the Prix de Diane.
Yes, and the ground was particularly testing at the Courier in Guineas weekend. It was heavy, hard work, and she just got nailed by Empress Josephine, who's also entered in this race. But Joan of Arc went on to France for Prix Diane. She was very well placed in France for stall 5. Got a very good tactical ride by Richmond Isabel, but she battled on really well, kept finding plenty for pressure, and I don't think she had a lot of time to respond to Empress Josephine at the Curragh, and maybe that ground just sapped it out of her. You would see her going by a line, her ears are pricked. She was in front on her own. She was a little bit idle in France, and when she was joined, she went again. In a race that could be tactical, we hope there's 8 runners for each way betting purposes. There probably won't be, but at 4-1, she could conceivably get an easy lead. There's only her and Shale that have made a running or ridden prominently in the past. You go look at KM Pepper, she normally likes to get a lead. Technique the same. And Ziada, Snow Lantern, Lady Bowthorpe, Empress Josephine are all usually hold up horse at a mile, and they're stepping up in trips. So it's going to be very, very interesting how it's played tactically. Maybe one of them hold up horses will take the bull by the horns and go forward. But if they do, they might set a light, whereas we know Joan of Arc is tactically versatile enough to maybe make her own running.
And how about Ordaria, who won over in Keelan at the Breeders' Cup at the back end of last season and has since finished a really creditable second to Love in the Prince of Wales Stakes?
Yeah, and she is remarkable. She won around Goodwood obviously a couple of years ago over a mile, and the progress she'd done last year when she went to France and onto the Breeders' Cup proved that wasn't just a once-off level of improvement with a great run on season debut in the Prince of Wales. Form got a knock yesterday. Okay, Love, she ran great. I think she ran into 2 possibly better colts. She ran a very good race. Armory, who was just behind Ordaria, was well beaten the Sky Bet Stakes at York. However, Ordaria should be capable or entitled to improve off that, and she's tactically versatile enough to go forward and sit second or third, keeping things simple. I've maximum respect for her, but I think she's skinny enough at the odds, and given the little knocks of form for the Ascot run, I'd be happy to play against her and go elsewhere possibly.
And your idea of the winner is?
Oh, a really interesting race to watch. I think Joan of Arc, I'm not an Ian O'Brien fan by now. I know I've mentioned Ottoman Emperor, the Johnny Murtagh runner, the other race, and all Irish horses, but I think Joan of Arc is very interesting. She's a 3-year-old, only 3 older horses have won it in the last 10 years. Got 9 pounds weight for age in a race that could prove tactically very significant. I think it could play to her hands, but Snow Lantern, I can't wait to see her at the trip and how they ride and how to deal with her. And equally Lady Boathorpe, but max respect for them ability wise, but will the track and conditions play to their strengths?
Okay, so that's Fran looking for a fiery performance from Joan of Arc. Just as for the July Festival, there are key juvenile races staged at the Qatar Goodwood Festival, the pattern events over the first 3 days of the 5-day meeting. But you will know now that in the knowledge we're keeping an eye on the juvenile charts and pot pickers. Let's have a look at those horses that are climbing, those that might be falling, and those that are new entries in terms of the best 2-year-old performances. So all of those highlighted in red have moved up since we last had a look at these. So Atomic Force has gone and won the Papin, and that means that he's gone up a pound according to the BHA. Sandrine, of course, has won the Duchess of Cambridge. And incidentally, Timeform take a less positive view of that success. Higher she is with comparatively with the BHA handicapping team than with Timeform. We've also got a number of horses there that clashed with each other in the July Stakes. I should point out that Berkshire Shadow has been put up a pound collaterally to 107 to reflect how the Coventry Stakes worked out at the July Festival, and Chipotle has been dropped a pound following his disappointing 9th in the Super Sprint. I also should mention Inspiral, of course, who was so impressive when winning at Sandown in the Star Stakes on Thursday. And I think you can expect Point Lonsdale, who's currently on 104, to be higher up these charts when we next look at this because he's won the Tyros. And also New Science's Pat Edery's success might well feature in this, but he hasn't yet been reassessed. This is how things currently stand. Now, I should mention horses that we're going to be seeing this week at Goodwood in the vintage Lusail, Berkshire Shadow and Eldrick Jones. We've also got horses entered in the Richmond in Asymmetric, Sam Maximus, Ebro River and Perfect Power, who should also be on that graphic, rightly speaking, because he's rated 104. And we've also got Fearby and Chipotle in the Morecambe. Let's start by having a look at the vintage deck, shall we? We can actually talk about a field, and we've got Berkshire Shadow taking on Lusail in this 7 furlong race, Group 2. We'll start by having a look at Berkshire Shadow. This is his debut success prior to winning the Coventry, and it was at Newbury.
Very slow start here. He sort of ducks away and loses plenty of ground, and very green. He learnt an awful lot, not just during this race, but obviously between it and Royal Ascot when he produced a really telling burst to win. And here you'll see another telling burst. He comes on the far side and mows down the leaders in very taking style. And he went on to better things at Royal Ascot and ought to improve again, I think, for the step up in trip. He's very strong at the line.
So let's move on to what happened in the July Stakes at the July Festival. The Coventry Stakes was comparatively brushed aside by the likes of Lusail.
Yes, I feel that Lusail had the run of the race. You'll see horses ahead of him in the early stages on the stands rail, but he controls the race in his section of the course over on the far side. And I think that was an advantage on this occasion. Steps back up to 7 furlongs, which is of interest. He ran over 7 before this, and apparently Richard Hannon rang the clerk of the course at Newmarket just about every day asking about the ground, because he wasn't sure whether to run him in this race or in the 7 furlong race, and he chose this race, and rightly. The 3 horses challenging on the far side get really close, but he knuckles down well and pulls it out of the fire. The 5th horse, Eldrick Jones, reopposes. He didn't look quick enough for 6th at the moment either, so I think the step up will help him. I think Lusail might get the chance in this small field to control the race again, and that will probably be to Berkshire Shadow's disadvantage. Berkshire Shadow, I think, Oisin Murphy will have to be alive to that and get going early in the straight.
They, of course, have both got a penalty for their Group 2 successes.
They have, so Eldrick Jones is £3 better with Lusail. Angel Bleu, who ran perfectly well on Saturday, at Ascot, although beaten, put up a fair performance, would have a chance getting the £3.
Let's move on to the Molecombe, shall we? The Markel Molecombe, which is run over 5 furlongs. It's a Group 3 on the Wednesday. The key players in terms of the form that they've already shown are the likes of Fearby and Chipotle, but there are also some unexposed horses who might take a big step forward here. We'll start by looking at Fearby, though, shall we? In the Dragon Stakes, that listed event at Sandown.
Yeah, a bit of a revelation here, Fearby, who's in the black colours. Kaboo, you'll see, is still very green. He ran a burster on his first racecourse outing at Royal Ascot to finish 6th on the wrong side of the course, and he just wasn't able to run up to that form. Again, I feel he ended up on the unfavoured side at Sandown this day. Mojo Maker, the horse in the green, may also reoppose Fearby, but Fearby was put them both significantly in their places late on. He's ridden to go clear, and while on the far side, the third horse, Kaboo, is searching for a run and ends up on that slower part of the track over on the far side. But though Fearby wins 5 lengths, Kaboo must have some sort of chance of reversing the form.
Yes. Very, very impressive success though for Ed Bethel, this horse.
Pulled right away in the closing stage. Ed Bethel, who's only been training, this is his first full year training, has started at a tremendous rate compared to his father James before him.
The next horse we're going to look at is Gubas, who is entered the Molecombe but also in the Richmond at the time of recording. You decided to put him in here. He's the Super Sprint winner, of course. Yeah,
I thought we ought to look at the Super Sprint race because this is Chipotle. I think it's a bit harsh of the handicappers to put him down £1, Chipotle, for this run, because as you'll see, he gets hampered 3, if not 4 times between the 2 and the 1 pole. Moyle Gubas in the maroon with the stars is making his winning move with a clear run. Here we go, Chipotle just gets sandwiched between these 2 horses and gets sandwiched a second time in a minute, and he just can't get out to make himself competitive. Now, I think he's worth a chance to show that this was below his form, because he was unable to perform to his best given all those bumps he got.
I suppose that this time it's so inchoate, isn't it? The 2-year-old, their performance figures, ratings, they are kind of, they're not just looking at that one run, are they? They're trying to get the whole ones working together. It's collateral element to it. They
are, but the suggestion is that he's been dropped £1 for that run, and I don't think that's really right. Perhaps he's been dropped £1 because they've looked at his Royal Ascot form and decided to downgrade that. I'm not sure.
Well, that might well have been me misrepresenting it. That's kind of what I'm trying to say. That's the collateral element as well. I'm sure it's not just that.
But I'd like to see Chipotle.
Just in case we have Eve Johnson-Horton writing into the BHA handicappers, I might have put you away there.
Well, let's hope Chipotle gets a clear run, if he does run in the Molecombe. He's a horse who's been on the go right since March, and he's won 3 races so far.
OK, let's have a look at the Unibet Richmond Stakes, shall we? And again, the horses that have achieved here are the likes of Perfect Power and Ebro River. Sam Maximus as well currently has a high performance figure, as does Asymmetric. We've picked out, though, Katura, the win at Newbury, Eddie.
Yeah, we've also highlighting Orazio, who was quite keen early on in the purple colours, but I like Katura's attitude, and he's got some £8 or £10 to make up on official ratings. I did like the way he travelled. He's the horse in the yellow colours, and you'll see just a bit keen in the paler colours on the wide left is Orazio, and you'll see in a minute when it comes to the line he's weakening. But Katura is gutsy, and I think he's improving.
And what you particularly like the way he knuckled down, was it?
I do. I think he stepped forward from his previous effort. I like the way he travels for a race at Goodwood. I think that'll suit him.
And how about Orazio? What chances to?
Well, he's got to settle better, hasn't he? You'll see his run peters out near the line. He was favourite for this race on the back of an impressive first win of the season, and William Buick's jocked up for him again. So significant jockey booking. The chance of reversing the form. I just like the way Katura gets down to work in the closing stages. As I say, he's got to step forward a good deal. Detail, who's flashing home on the stand side, won a decent race, I think, at Newmarket the time before, and I think that's strong form.
The winner need not to edge to his left that way, mightn't he?
Yeah, that's possible. That might be a disadvantage around that bend.
OK. Let's have a look at Perfect Power next, shall we? He's, of course, has won the Norfolk Stakes, but first of all, we'll have a look at his success at Hamilton.
Yeah, he did lots of things wrong. A bit like Berkshire Shadow we showed you earlier. He falls out the stalls and he gets rather detached, but again, very strong at the line, and he showed that he was progressive by winning at Royal Ascot, and I think he's probably the one to beat in the Richmond. He's got a sharp burst of speed at the closing stages and goes right away. He's just edging the other way, which might be suitable.
How about the likes of Ebro River and Asymmetric?
Yeah, they ran behind Lusail, who's also in this race with a penalty.
Of course, I should have mentioned, sorry.
And San Maximus, they all ran close together. They're very difficult to pick which one of those is going to come out in front, so I thought I'd go somewhere else with Perfect Power, who has got a £3 penalty for his win at Royal Ascot, but I think he can get over that.
Okay, and of course there are other races. Other 2-year-old races are available at Goodwood. We might see a bright performance from some of the other contests.
Yeah, and there are nurseries at the back end of the week, and they're always of interest.
Yes, I know. When 2-year-olds become handicapped, I start getting interested. Now let's have a look at the Al-Shakab Goodwood Cup. I think many people's favourite race of the entire week. It's brought up such fantastic winners in the past, as we have already discussed earlier in the show. Let's have a look at its position in the pattern, its significance. It's had many forms, as you can see there, over the years. It is now a Group 1 over 2 miles for 3-year-olds and upwards, and there is a well-trodden cup route below. Of course, the St Leger only open to 3-year-olds, the rest of them open. Stradivarius, who runs again this year, has won the last 4 editions of the Goodwood Cup. He is the most successful winner of it. The fastest winner is Yates, and that does look like an anomaly, doesn't it? Because there's a slower course record below from Solder in Action in the 2-mile handicap. That's because the course was remeasured from 2017, and as I understand it, the 2-mile was the only distance that had a significant difference. Let's talk about this year's field, shall we, Fran? We actually have the declarations and we can have a look at the official ratings. Sadly, of course, we don't have Subjectivist because of that significant injury that he has sustained. Instead, his stable companion and half-brother, Sir Ron Priestley, full brother actually, Sir Ron Priestley, steps up to take on Stradivarius.
Sir Ron Priestley, very, very good at Newmarket in the Princess of Wales Stakes when last seen. He's 2 from 3 on the track at Goodwood, and it's very interesting to see him up to 2 miles for the first time, Lydia. The way he stayed on in Newmarket, typical Johnson horse, putting the fight early, battled on well up the hill in a race that mightn't be overly testing on stamina. He could have the tactical speed from the front to really make hay around Goodwood. We know he acts around the track. Naif Road acts very well also around the track for Mark Johnson. He hasn't been in the best form in recent starts. He's 2 course runs and he's won there, and also second, of course, Stradivarius last year. But Sir Ron Priestley is very interesting stepping up trip, you would think.
Yeah, Franny Norton, who knows him so well, is very interesting about this horse, isn't he? He felt that the horse was coming to his end of its tether over 1.5 miles here. He also felt that if he didn't know the horse and didn't know that it had run so well in the St Leger as a 3-year-old, when he got off after the Yorkshire Cup, that he would think that the horse hadn't stayed. So there's a difference of opinion within the camp, isn't there? And he's only here because Subjectivist can't be.
There is, I would say though, the July course, he was sent on a long way from home, and he might just be able to gauge that run for a little bit longer in Goodwood with the nature of the track, a freewheel downhill from the 3.5 down to the 2. And if he doesn't get taken on too early, if he's in his comfort zone, he could conceivably get home. But I remember Franny saying that to you after race, that he was out on his feet in the last 100 yards in Newmarket. It's fascinating. He's a horse I like a lot. He did come up short in the Yorkshire Cup behind Spanish Mission on that occasion when he did run maybe below par, maybe didn't get home, but interesting to see him around a track like Goodwood, and he comes here on a high. Spanish Mission for me is very interesting, Lydia, back to 2 miles.
Yeah, let's have a look at Spanish Mission, shall we? You mentioned the Yorkshire Cup. This was the race in which Sir Ron Priestley flopped, but Spanish Mission was very good this day.
He was, and he's a 2-miler with a sharp turn of foot, almost like Stradivarius when he's at his best. But Spanish Mission was held up on this occasion, made good work to get into the race under William Buick and quickened up well. Very likeable individual who, when he's on song, is pretty decent. And that run here, beating Santiago by 2.25 lengths, and back then to Doncaster last year, and he won the Doncaster Cup, of course, over 2-2. I think 2 miles is his best go. 2.5 miles just stretched him that little bit, and I think he'll enjoy Goodwood. He ran third there on his only start there at the track.
And how about Santiago, who inherited second from Sir Ron Priestley there?
I don't know. I don't know. I think he wants really soft ground to be at his best. I think when he was in the Irish Derby last year, he showed a sharp turn of foot on really heavy ground. And I think that's where he excels. He hasn't got that ground since.
Okay. Let's talk about the record breaker Stradivarius, shall we? The 4 times winner of the Goodwood Cup, the winner of this race last year, beating Nay Off Road. $1 million question, Fran, is he as good as he was?
I think the jury is out, and it just we asked for this clip to be shown. Shows what Frankie done him in Ascot. He also done here last year. He tends to hit the gate very quickly with Frankie, and he's always just tried to get him back, to get cover and get him settled in a rhythm. Didn't work out in Ascot, but he didn't finish well at all in Ascot. Lydia, he had his head cocked to the right more so in Ascot than he did on normally what he does. We see him here the way he cocks his jaw to the right when he comes under pressure, but it was more pronounced in the Gold Cup at Ascot, and he didn't finish out despite not getting the best runs, but he still should have ran home, I think, better than he did. So look, he goes there with questions to answer. His pre-race antics are getting more boisterous by the run, and he is a 7-year-old colt now, so it'll be interesting to see how he does behave pre-race. He loves the track. He beat Big Orange there as a 3-year-old, but mentally, is he there?
Yeah, he's now, the BHA now rated 1-2-1. At the end of last year, he was 1-2-4. Subjectivist, after his success in the Gold Cup at Ascot, 1-2-5. So they're thinking that potentially he's not as good as he was. At that age, is it just more difficult to keep an entire's mind on the racing job? I mean, you see it with other horses. I mean, there were even signs with Frankel towards the end of his 4-year-old career.
Very much so, and I think the trip he's running over gives him too much time to think. He's in his comfort zone. He travels, and he's getting. It's interesting. Princess Zoe was outside him all the way in the Gold Cup. I don't know whether that's a factor, but he never had a tactical pace to take her on.
Yeah, interesting. So the winner is?
I think Spanish Mission will be very suited by the makeup of the race. Interesting, Sir Ron Priestley, see how he does go to 2-mile distance for the first time, but Spanish Mission could have things go his way, and Andrew Balding's team, I think, just in superb form. Okay,
Spanish Mission for Fran. The Goodwood Cup is not the only significant stayers race at the Qatar Festival. The Lily Langtree is another. It used to be a Group 3, but it was upgraded to Group 2 in 2017 as part of a European Patent Committee initiative to improve opportunities for stayers. That's when the Goodwood Cup became a Group 1 as well. This race is for over 14 furlongs, and it's for 3-year-olds and upwards fillies. Fran, an interesting field. We don't really know what the final makeup is going to be. There's potential for some rain forecast during the week. If we do get rain, we could see the King George non-runner Wonderful Tonight.
We could, and it'd be fantastic to see, Lydia. The big thing for Dave Manuzzi as a trainer is that you don't want to keep peaking a horse, so I'm sure he'd love to get a run into her now, having had her ready for the Eclipse. The King George, and if you could run her next week, it'd probably fit into her programme very well. Fascinating if the French entry comes over. Villia, trained by Alan Derrera-Rupe, that one was beat by Wonderful Tonight last year in Deauville in a Group 3, has improved this year. Rare Aga Khan runner in the UK, and be interested to see who rides her with the possible embargo on French jockeys travelling over at the minute.
Yes, it will be interesting if she does come over. Second to Subjectivist in the Royal Oak at the back end of last season, has won a Longchamp Group 3 this. How about Aidan O'Brien? There's a couple that he's mentioned in regard to this race. One of them is Passion and the other is High Heels.
Passion will definitely improve for her seasonal debut. When Iran Naveen went off, got a free lead in the Curragh, and she could never land a blow. Will be better for that. High Heels has to improve for all that she does get to weight for age. And if divinely backed up from the Epsom or from the Irish Oaks run, she would be very interesting stepping up and trip, but it is a quick turnaround.
And how about Alpinista, the Lancashire Oaks winner?
Very, very likeable, and the way she boxed on in Haydock, I think stepping up and trip will suit her, and she's very versatile as regards trip and ground, and she won around Goodwood. Really interesting. It's more with the 4-year-olds than the 3-year-olds this race, I'd say.
I'm hoping that we get a good field this time around. It was a small field last year. This is shaping up to potentially be a good contest.
It is. In Search for a Song, also an interesting runner, of course, the dual ledger winner, and they've campaigned her over shorter trips and occasions. Didn't work the last day. She's a 1.6 2-mile filly. I hope to keep her there from now on.
Okay. Well, Fran, thank you very much for your thoughts on that race and the rest of the Qatar Goodwood Festival. Thanks also to all of my guests during the course of this show. I hope you've enjoyed it. Make sure you join us next time, which will be just ahead of the Go Racing in Yorkshire Ivor Festival. Till then, bye-bye.